Hi, boys and girls. We're going to wait a few minutes to give a second or two for everyone to join us. We'll start our live broadcast with the author about 2:02. All right, so fifth graders, we're so excited to have a very special guest with us. We see some of us are joining us now. We're going to give, like I said, another minute for all of our friends to be able to get back from lunch and log in. Like I said, we're going to start with the actual presentation in about a minute, okay? Okay. All right, so we're going to begin, and we are so excited to have this amazing author with us today. She's going to read a little bit from her books and give us some background and discuss with us some of her books. So I'm going to leave it to her right now. I'm going to remove myself, and I can't wait to hear.
Hi, everyone. Happy World Read Aloud Day. My name is Shirin Shamsi, and I have my two books here that I will share with you. This is The Girl Who Did, and this is Layla and the Sands of Time. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in the UK, and you can probably guess that from my accent. But I have lived in Chicago for 32 years now, so I just didn't lose the accent. I came here in my 20s, so I guess when you're grown up, you don't change very much. And also I wanted to share that 3 generations of my family have lived on 3 different continents. My parents were born in India, and then when my mother was 22, she migrated to the UK. And I was born in the UK. And then when I was in my 20s, I came to the US, and this is where I've raised my children. So we're kind of global citizens in a way. And the first book I'd like to talk about is The Girl Who Did. And it's a story very close to my heart because it's actually both my mother's story, based on my mother's story, and also on my mother-in-law's story. And I've actually named the main character Ruqayya, which was my mother-in-law's name. And it's set during the partition of India. in 1947, because that's when that happened while my mother was growing up. And I'll read a couple of pages from this, and then I'll go on to the next. The Girl Who Dared. Chapter 1, The Bike. Ruqayya stepped outside. She moved quietly toward the shed. No one would choose to leave the cool house for the humid outdoors. No one but Ruqayya, who yearned for adventure. The wooden door creaked as she pulled it open. She sighed with relief to see no one was there as she opened the wooden door wide. Looking over her shoulder once again, Ruqayya made sure no one was watching. Ummi was resting with the baby. Papa was away with Ruqayya's older brother, Atif. Babu had gone to fetch her 5-year-old brother, Noni, who was at a friend's house. Ruqayya grabbed the servant's bike from the shed and wheeled it out. She paused to carefully close the door, and then she was off. Ruqayya rode the bike down the lane of the family Haveli. The enclosure spread out as far and as wide as her eyes could see. Her family had lived here for as long as the banyan trees grew, perhaps even longer. As the afternoon sun burned down on her, Ruqayya smiled, turning her face up to greet its blazing warmth. She did not care if her face turned dark as roasted almonds, for she felt free as a bird. I would like to take questions for both the books maybe at the end. My second book, Layla and the Sands of Time, is about a 13-year-old girl who has recently lost her father. And she was planning to go on pilgrimage with her father the year before, but then he passed away. So this is kind of beginning when she's her uncle and aunt are going to take her on pilgrimage. And I will let me share something about this book. So I found this handwriting of my father's in a scrapbook. It says, "Through the ever-changing and ever-changeable time that was once mine." It was written in his scrapbook of 1938, before the Second World War. And I just felt like I would like to have my father's words before my own words. And I asked the publisher, and she very graciously did that for me. So she sandwiched my words between my father's. So his quotation is in the front, and it's also on one of the back pages. So I shall begin. Layla and the Sands of Time, Chapter 1. Packing. Layla pulled the closet open and dragged out her suitcase. In just a few hours, she would be leaving with her aunt and uncle. She stood gazing at the sunlight-dappled patterns as they danced across her bedroom wall, and wondered if going on pilgrimage was even a good idea. She unzipped the suitcase and sighed. Would going all the way on pilgrimage, Umrah, fix everything that was wrong in her life? She was going for Baba, her father. It was what they had planned together before her whole world turned upside down. Layla glanced at the clock on the wall. It was only 6 a.m. She watched the seconds tick by. Her eyes clouded over as she remembered. Would that she could turn back time, back 2 years, before Baba remarried, before he got sick, before everything changed. But she was not a time traveler like Doctor Who, nor did she have a TARDIS. She stared out of her bedroom window. Everything looked the same. Out front, the maple tree stood tall, with its bare branches spread wide. Spring was late again in Chicago. A tire swing moved in the soft early morning breeze, suspended by thick ropes. She turned away from the window, blinking back tears. A prayer mat sat folded in the corner, collecting dust, unused since Baba died. She had missed Fajr, the morning prayer, again. The thought tugged at her heart, for she didn't want to let Baba down. Her gaze came to rest upon a photograph on the nightstand by her bed. A framed picture of Baba with Layla on her 13th birthday, taken before he was diagnosed with lung cancer. Baba's arm rested on her shoulder, his face lit up with joy. He looked so alive, yet the cancer had eaten away at him, and within 4 months he would be gone. Layla's smile was wide in the photograph, her eyes sparkling. She decided she could never feel happy again, as she was in that photograph. Picking up the photograph, she wrapped it tenderly in the soft folds of her mother's hijab, then slid it into her backpack. She would take this memento of her mother to wear on pilgrimage. Layla pulled herself up and rummaged in her closet, grabbing a shirt and jeans to wear at school. It was the last day before spring break. Tiptoeing slowly down the stairs, Layla hoped no one had woken up yet. She avoided her stepmom when she could. Raisa was already there in the kitchen when Layla walked in. She greeted Layla with a smile. She stood tall and slim, a shawl draped around her shoulders. "Salaam alaikum, Layla," she said. "You're up early." Layla's stepmom stood by the stove, warming up some milk for baby Nyla. "I need to pack before school," said Layla, as a frown furrowed her forehead. She turned away, impatient, as she grabbed a glass and filled it with water. She gulped it down quickly and left the kitchen before Raisa could ask anything more. Running back upstairs, Layla stood staring at her suitcase, then shrugged and decided she would pack later. She grabbed her backpack and trudged downstairs. Slipping on her shoes and jacket, she breathed a sigh, muttered a goodbye, and left the house. At least on pilgrimage, she would be away from them. She had to get away. It was hard enough without Baba, but worse having the daily reminder of her stepmom and Nyla. Chapter 2. Layla stared at the doodles she had idly drawn across her science notebook. "Students, I have a great surprise for you all," Mrs. Mullings announced. She rubbed her hands together, looking far more excited than the students appeared. "We will be taking part in a DNA experiment. Just think of how a strand of hair or a drop of saliva holds the key to your history. Science is the most thrilling mystery." Mrs. Mullings' enthusiasm was contagious. Soon the whole class was abuzz with chatter as she patiently answered each of their questions. "We will be going to the Field Museum's DNA Discovery Center on the 17th of next month, where we get to take part in a new scientific breakthrough in DNA research and go on a guided tour of the lab to witness real scientists at work. It's all so very exciting. And finally," she added, looking at the clock, "oh dear, time is running out, but I can't leave you all in suspense for the entire spring break. We will all get to have our DNA tests done." The hum of excitement in the classroom rose as the bell rang to announce the end of the school day. There was a sudden scraping of chairs and a scurry to hurry out of class. Enjoy your break, everyone. Stay safe. See you next month, said Mrs. Mullings. And don't forget to read the chapter on DNA, she added. Layla slammed her book shut and pushed out her chair. She swung her backpack over her shoulder and followed Beth out the door. Kids thronged the hallway as more spilled out from other classrooms. Lockers opened and slammed shut as everyone emptied their contents in haste to leave for the start of their break. Layla caught up with Beth at the staircase. Hey, Layla, are you leaving tonight, aren't you? Beth said as they walked down the stairs together. Yes, and I haven't even packed yet, Layla replied as two boys hurriedly zipped past them. I can help. Is it okay if I come over? Beth asked as she looked at Layla. That would be great, Layla said with a sigh. Okay, Layla? Beth asked. Sorry. Are you okay, Layla? Beth asked. There was concern in her voice. Layla had not been herself of late. I'm just wondering if going on pilgrimage to Mecca is a good idea after all. My dad wanted to take me. Now I'm going with my aunt and uncle. It won't be the same. Layla didn't finish her sentence. It was too painful to remember. And just over a year ago, she would have gone with Baba. Well, I hope you enjoyed that excerpt from Layla and the Sands of Time. And I was hoping that you would have some questions for me.
So we have a lot of questions. So one of our first questions from Emma is, what inspired you to write books?
That goes back really, really, really far. Well, I've always loved reading and I've always loved writing. Like when I was 7 years old, I remember going to the shop around the corner with my pocket money and I bought a diary. And I would write in my diary religiously every single night. So that's been something that I've always done. But the actual moment when I decided I want to be a writer more than anything else was when I became a mother. And I just thought I want my daughter to see herself in books. And that was such an important thing for me. Because in those days, I mean, I'm talking 30 plus years ago, there were not many diverse books about different cultures. And I just felt like I need to do this for my children. And now that they're all grown up, I do it for the children of the world. I hope that answers your question. And thank you that was a great question.
They would like to know, how long have you been writing books and how long have you been writing in general? I know you said you started in your journal. How long ago was that?
How long ago did I start writing like my first book? Well, I would call this my first real book that I published. It's my debut novel. So I started writing this. Okay, let me think back. I used to write for my kids and just laminate them. I would make homemade books, basically. I would write stories, draw pictures, laminate them, and just read them with my kids. And then, so at the time, my son was 5, my daughter was 6, and then my oldest was 10. And my 10-year-old said to me, how come you only write picture books? When are you going to write a chapter book? And that is when I decided to write Layla and the Sands of Time. So she is 34 now. So if you do the math, it was a really long time ago. And it wasn't even called Layla and the Sands of Time. It started off being called Daughter of the Desert. And just 1 month before I signed the contract for publication, I decided to change the name. And I really think Layla and the Sands of Time sounds just as it should sound. I'm really happy with the title. So thank you for that question.
Liam wants to know, do you write on a typewriter? How do you write on a ballpoint pen? Do you change over to the computer eventually?
What I do is I have all these notebooks, and each notebook has the title or the working title of what I'm working on. So I think I've got about 20 notebooks. And so I scribble either with a pencil or a pen. I mean, my handwriting is really bad, but I just write the words out as they come, and then I will transfer it to my laptop, because I feel like my brain and hand connection works better when I'm using a pen or pencil. I can't type directly onto the computer. And my creativity doesn't flow as well, I guess. So.
William wants to know, do you have a publisher that you work with mostly, or do you send your manuscripts out? How does it work? How do you get published?
Well, I did with Layla and the Sands of Time. I had a publisher so I was submitting everywhere, to every publisher I could, and I was getting rejection after rejection. And then suddenly this publisher, Claire Falk Publishing, based in Texas, reached out to me and said, I'd like to take a look at the whole manuscript. And that was like a dream come true, because, you send 10 pages, or you just send a letter of, requesting if they're interested in your work. But she wanted the whole manuscript. And I just sent it to her, and she said, I want to publish this. And she sent me a contract. It was like a dream come true. And so now, because I have such a good relationship with this publisher at Claire Falk, she's publishing 2 more picture books this year. One is coming out in May, one in September. So excited about that. But since then, I have now acquired an agent. And now the agent is doing the work of submitting stories, and she has submitted 2, and I've signed a contract with one other publisher. So those are different publishers. She said to me, I want you to go with the big 5 now, no more small publishing. I said, as long as children read my books, that's what matters to me.
Okay, excellent. We have a great question from Aiden. Do you like to read?
Aiden, I love to read. In fact, when I think about my childhood, books were my friends. I was an extrovert. I didn't go to my friends' homes so much, and I just kept, I stayed home mostly, so I feel like books were my friends, and I just read a lot of books. Yes, I love reading. Even now, I love reading.
Okay, so we have a question. Do you only write fiction books?
I prefer to write fiction, but I did this company that published this. It's called Teachers Created Materials, and it's actually a school curriculum company. And they asked me, they send out projects and request and I accepted their request to write a nonfiction book on civics, which should be out this year too, but I just don't have a date. So yes, that's the first nonfiction I've written, and it was for Teachers Created Materials.
Okay. I know I asked you this before, but I'm getting a lot of the same questions. So if you could just maybe talk a little bit more again about what inspires you. They're asking again. They want to know that again. So if you could just go into that again, maybe you missed it.
Okay. What inspires me? Mostly, I would say children. Children inspire me because I remember how it was when I was a child. I know the world is a lot different from what it was when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s. But I just feel that sometimes children feel helpless and lost. And I think books are comforting and empowering. And I just think that's why I write. I write for children and the hope that I can in some way comfort them or encourage them or give them hope. And just I just hope that they can curl up with a book and enjoy the story. And yeah, that's why I do it. But honestly, it's all about the children. I did work as an early childhood educator, so it's always been about children for me.
They want to know if you have an idol or a favorite author.
Favorite author? I've always loved authors like Eric Carle, and there's so many. Gosh, there are so many. How about this? When I was growing up, Enid Blyton was my favorite author, but she was like the most prolific children's author of that time. And I don't think children read her now. So she was my favorite author because she was probably the Beverly Cleary or Kate DiCamillo of her time. And right now I'm reading some good middle grade books, and I'm really enjoying Kate DiCamillo's books. One story that especially inspired me and may have subconsciously contributed to Layla and the Sands of Time, and it's Tom's Midnight Garden. Again, it's a very old book, you can tell from the cover, but it's a time travel book. So maybe at the back of my mind, something from that inspired Layla and the Sands of Time.
Are you a big Doctor Who fan? We heard that in your opening.
Yes, Doctor Who, I have followed every single Doctor Who. The first one came out when I was 3 years old, so I didn't watch the first episode. But when I was 5, I have a memory of seeing Daleks and being absolutely terrified of them as a 5-year-old. And then whenever Doctor Who would change, I would be really sad, and then I would get used to the new one. And it still happens because I really liked David Tennant, and then he changed, and then I got used to Matt Smith, and then he changed. But I mean, they're always good, but they're so different. So it's like you have to start getting used. And I have a little free library out on my front lawn, and it's actually Doctor Who's TARDIS. So I'm pretty obsessed with time travel and Doctor Who. And sometimes I was trying to analyze myself. Why am I obsessed with Doctor Who? And it's that idea that you can capture time, you can go back in time, because time is such a fascinating thing. So, yeah.
So you want to know which book of the books that you've written yourself is your favorite book?
Okay, that's going to be so hard. Because I'm thinking of the ones that are out on submission as well. I have one out on submission, and the publisher has said, yes, we want this book, but I can't talk about it because I haven't signed a contract. But, excuse me. So that has a special place in my heart because it was actually inspired by my mother's childhood journey. And it was a very dangerous journey for her to cross from India to Pakistan during the partition. And I really love that story because she told me her story, and then I just sat down and wrote this picture book story. So that has a special place in my heart, but also Layla and the Sands of Time, I would say, because it's the longest and it's more profound, and it has a piece of me. I think every book I write has a piece of me, but Layla may have a lot more because there are some scenes in it that I had dreams, and I would wake up and I would just write down those scenes. So they're conversations between Layla and her father. It's almost like it was a conversation between me and my father, and so yeah, that's kind of special.
They also want to know, what's your process of making your books? Do you start with a character or do you start with a problem first?
That is really interesting because with Layla, I just had this idea in my head that a girl is going on pilgrimage. So I don't know how many of you know about the Muslim pilgrimage. So in Mecca, in Saudi Arabia, there is this black cube known as the Kaaba, which actually means cube, and it was supposedly, I mean, Muslims believe it was built by Abraham and his son, and it was the first place of worship in the world. So that's why it's revered by millions of people, that it was the first place of where God was worshipped. So that is where Muslims go for pilgrimage. And I just had this idea that what if Layla was going around the black cube and she suddenly finds herself transported to the 7th century and she has to save a baby's life. That thought just came to me, and then I kind of built the whole story around that, because in my first draft, Layla had a mother and a father, and she was living very happily, and the story just remained stuck for many, many years. And then when I asked my critique partners to take a look, they said, you don't have a problem, and every story has to have a problem. And the main character has to have a challenge so that she can grow and change. And so sadly, that meant her parents had to go. That was a sad moment for me. Sorry.
They want to know how many books total have you written in your life?
I have a lot of manuscripts that are not books yet, but I have so many. But my agent can only take one at a time and submit that. And then when that's under contract, then I send her another one. So there's always one being sent out, and then she sends it to different publishing companies. It's a very, very slow process. But I have over 80 works in progress. Some are complete, some are half done. I mean, I've got a ton of work. It's just a very slow process.
They loved the pictures and The Girl Who Dared. Do you want to know if you drew them or if you had an illustrator work with you?
Well, that was the amazing thing. So when I sent this to my manuscript to the publisher and they approved it, they said, we will find an illustrator. So then they said, we found a really wonderful illustrator. Would you approve the pictures? So they showed me the pictures. And I just couldn't believe how beautiful they were. So I've never met Philia, and I have emailed her since because I just love the pictures so much that I said I want to reach out to her. But no, the publishing company finds the illustrator, unless you're someone like Eric Carle and you do both the illustrations and the text.
Okay. They want to know if anyone in your family writes books, or are you the only one in your family that writes books?
Well, my father, he was actually an educator, but when he retired, he started writing. His books were all nonfiction. I mean, they were like theological texts, but he was a writer. So in my home, I always saw the value of the written word and books from a very young age. And now my brother is a writer too. He has not been published yet, but he writes, and I think his writing is amazing. So maybe everyone is a writer. It's just that we have to sit down and start writing. That's what I think. Like, if I tell everyone, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
We have an interesting question. Who is your favorite character out of any of your books?
Wow, I haven't even thought about that, but my favorite character, okay. I'm going to have to think of it. So I have a book coming out in May, and it's about a dinosaur who has a difficulty focusing, and his name is Anki, and he's an ankylosaurus. And he's so cute. I just saw the illustrations the other day, and I think he's probably the cutest character out of all my books. and his name is Anki, and he's an ankylosaurus. And the title is Baseballosaurus, because he wants to play baseball.
Are all of your stories based off of personal stories and experiences?
I would say they're inspired, but not based, because they're all works of fiction. But there's something that inspires, that comes from within me. So in a sense, I wouldn't say they're based off of my own experiences, but definitely inspired by. Like Layla is completely fiction, but her life, there must be something similar to my own. I mean, she lost her father, I lost my father, and there's your experiences do come through into your books, whether you like it or not.
Okay, so this is a long question. What is your favorite genre to read, whether it was childhood, adulthood, or the genre that you still love from childhood to this day?
I do love reading fiction, but I also love nonfiction. But I think as a child, I loved books like adventure books, like Enid Blyton, for example. Where was that book I was holding? I think it was, yeah. So Enid Blyton, she wrote mystery books, and I always loved mysteries. Mysteries and adventure and something exciting, because when you're just a kid and you don't go out very much, you want something exciting and adventurous that can just take you away into another world. But I have to say, I enjoyed the Harry Potter books so much as an adult. So you know what? As an adult, I read mostly children's middle grade novels, but I also read others, like Marilyn Robinson is an adult author. I would say she's probably my favorite at the moment.
Okay. Do you ever write with anyone else, or do you always write alone? Do you have any co-authored books?
Well, here's some news. I have always written alone, but now I'm collaborating with two other authors on a friendship story. And so one is the actual publisher of Layla and the Sands of Time. She's also a writer. And so we decided we would do a story of friendship between a Christian girl, a Muslim girl, and a Jewish girl. So we come from three different backgrounds, and we're going to do a friendship story together. And hopefully that'll be out this year too.
Okay, so they want to know, a lot of people want to know how long Layla book is. Is it very long? Yeah, they want to know how many chapters it is, how long it is.
It's not very long compared to other middle grade novels, I've noticed. Let me see how many pages. It's about 126 pages. And how many chapters? Let me see. 24 chapters. But if I can compare it, okay, when you talk about books, you talk about the word count. So this is 32,000 word count. And most middle grade novels are like 45,000, some are 50,000. So it's a lot. It's one of the shorter middle grade
novels. Oh. And a lot of people want to know about why you chose this as a career and keep doing it. Why do you keep writing?
Why do I keep doing it? Writing makes me feel as if I'm contributing to tomorrow's world, if that makes sense, because I feel like I write for children, and children are the future of this world. And if my stories can even ignite a spark of hope or joy or anything positive, that would make me feel like I've contributed in some way. And we're all here to do some good in the world. So this is my way of doing it.
Oh. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Do you have any advice for people who want to become writers? I see that a lot of the comments were that I want to become a writer when I grow up. Do you have any advice for them?
I do, because I was the shyest, most introvert person you could ever meet. I had absolutely no confidence in myself. I just loved to read, and I always felt like I didn't have the courage until I was in my 30s. So if I could talk to my former self, if I could tell, excuse me, if I could tell my 8-year-old or 9-year-old or 10-year-old self, I would say just believe that you can do anything that you set your heart on. And I really think that if a child knew that everything is within you, you have so much power within you. If you believe in yourself, you can do anything. And practical tips are these: just read, and write every day, even if it's 3 sentences. Because the more you write, the more you will be able to express yourself and your thoughts, and it will become easier. So just imagine if you're 10 or 11 years old now, and if you write every day, I can easily see you'll be an author before you're 20. So, I mean, it took me a long time. So I'm sure that you'll do much better than I did. And I believe in all of you. And I believe in the future, because kids today are just so much more knowledgeable and wise and great.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so lucky to have you.
It was an honor and a privilege, and I can't tell you how grateful I am. I just wish I could see everyone.
I know. So do we. We wish we could have everyone here together in assembly, maybe in the future. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.